Hi, and welcome to MTG Friends. I'm Zach, and today we're going to be doing yet another Commander deck tech. This one is starring the biggest crabby boy of all. We're doing Charyx, the Raging Isle. As you probably saw with Ryan and my video over this guy, he's kind of hilarious. And so, while we were joking in the video, I decided to actually go ahead and make this bad boy. He's huge. He is 4 mana for a legendary Leviathan Crab. He's an 0/17. Spells your opponent's cast that target him cost 2 more to cast, and you can pay 3 mana to give him +X -X until end of turn, where X is the number of islands you control. And so there's a lot of things we can really take advantage of on this card, as silly as that sounds, but the fact that this is a card with 0 power actually means that we can kind of take this in a funny direction. We can make use of cards that care about that low power and turn it into a Voltron advantage. So what is Voltron in Commander as we get started real quick? So Voltron, when it comes to Commander, essentially means your commander is trying to deal 21 points of damage to each opponent. In Commander rules, if a legendary creature that is someone's commander on its own deals 21 points of damage to somebody, they lose. Now, since Charix is an 0/17 and has the ability to kind of invert his power and toughness based on the number of islands you have, really a big advantage we can do here is actually just power this guy up and smack people with him. What's nice is he has some kind of built-in protection with the costing 2 more to target, and we've gone ahead and included some additional effects that will offer Charyx a lot of protection and invasion. So today we're going to go over a couple categories as we discuss how this deck's going to play. So first, we have 3 cards that will swap power and toughness. Next up, we have a whole 15 cards that are protection or removal. These are mostly counter spells, but some of these are just hexproof options, and even a couple equipments. Then we have Voltron, which is our commander, about suiting up our commander in various ways, and making him nice, big, and beefy. We have 36 lands in this deck. While it only lists 33 right here, the other ones are just hiding in some other categories. We have Ramp over here, which is 16 pieces of ramp. These are different ways that we're going to get lands out onto the battlefield or gain additional mana. We've got our Tutors. These are 6 cards that are going to search our library for various cards that we would like to use. And we have 6 card draw cards as well, and then 8 cards that will give us some form of evasion. This is the way that we're going to make sure that Charyx connects with people's faces and probably kills people. That's really the goal here. We want to kill people with a giant raging Leviathan Crab. Alright, so let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to go ahead and talk about actually is our Voltron options here. These are all the equipments that we're going to, or enchantments in one case, that we're going to put on Charyx, make him super big, and really start smacking people with. And the reason that we're going to start with Voltron and not the power and toughness swapping over here is because at its base, Charyx is an 0/17, and if we swapped his power and toughness, he would just die. And that's not really the goal here. We don't want to kill Charyx. So we need to get Charyx out, suit him up a little bit, and then we can start swapping power and toughness and smacking people. So let's talk about, very first, like I said, the equipments that we're going to use to suit him up and make his power even the slightest bit bigger. So we're going to run Blackblade Reforged, which is a 2-mana legendary equipment. Costs 3 to equip to a legendary creature, 7 to equip to a non-legendary creature. We're never going to do that. We're going to put it on Charyx immediately. And it gives that creature +1/+1 for each land you have. And as you'll see in a minute, we're going to try and generate a lot of lands. Next one is Brass Squire. You can tap Brass Squire, and it just lets you attach an equipment to a creature you control. Very helpful to kind of dodge some of the equip cost, I suppose, but also lets you at instant speed move some equipments around if you need to. Next up's an enchantment, Eldrazi Conscription. 8 mana enchantment, colorless, and it just gives the dude +10/+10 trample and annihilator. I don't normally play this in decks. It's a very costly enchantment, but it's kind of hilarious, and I think turning Charyx into a 10/27 trampling annihilator is amazing, and everyone should do it. Play this card. Next up is Fire Shrieker. It costs 3, equips for 2, gives your creature double strike. That's one way to win with commander damage really quickly. Over here we have Fumble. It says return target creature to its owner's hand, gain control of all auras and equipments attached to it, and attach them to another creature. If your opponent's playing Voltron, before they get hexproof, fumble them. Stick them on Charyx, just make them bigger faster. Golem Skin Gauntlet costs 1 to cast, 2 to equip, and it gives the equipped creature +1/+0 for each equipment attached to it. This is really about just giving him some extra power nice and quickly, and cheaply if we have lots of other equipments on there. Hammer of Nazan is a personal favorite, and this is one of the highlights of this deck in my opinion. It costs 4 mana to cast, 4 mana to equip, but whenever it or another equipment enters the battlefield under your control, you can attach it to a target creature you control, and it gives them +2/+0 and indestructible. So the faster you can get Hammer of Nazan out, the faster you can really just start throwing your equipments directly onto Charyx. They're super fast, super dangerous this way. Hammer of Nazan is an all-star in this deck. Illusionist's Bracers is another one that I think is really important here. It costs 2 to cast, 3 to equip, and when the ability of an equipped creature is activated, if it is not a mana ability, you can copy that ability and choose new targets for the copy. The reason this is helpful is it lets us use Charyx's activated ability twice each time we activate it, which could potentially pump our big Raging Crab up bigger than usual. Next up is just a nice cheap one, Lidoxan Warhammer. Gives him +3/+0 trample and lifelink. It's nice to gain a lot of life, who can complain? Shadow Spear is next, gives equipped creature +1/+1 trample and lifelink, and for 1, it lets permanents your opponents control lose hexproof and indestructible. This card is super helpful, especially with cards like Fumble, where if an opponent is playing cards like Swiftfoot Boots, Lightning Greaves, any number of auras that would give hexproof or indestructible, we can sneak around that by playing Shadow Spear, activating that ability, and then fumbling the absolute snot out of their creature. Very powerful effect, so if you have one of these, play it. Next up is Strata Scythe. This is the one that makes Charyx absolutely insane. For 3 mana to cast, 3 to equip, it has Imprint. When it enters the battlefield, search your library for a land card, exile it, and shuffle. The equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each land on the battlefield with the same name. So we're running a lot, 24 islands, and so Strata Scythe can make Charyx absolutely massive at very minimal cost. The final equipment we have here is Sword of Feast and Famine. This is one of the legendary sword cycle. It's not actually a legendary equipment, but this is a very well-known cycle that we currently have 7 members of, with 3 more left, hopefully in Modern Horizons 2 this upcoming year. Very powerful card. It gives the equipped creature +2/+2, protection from black and green, and when the equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card and you untap all your lands, which is just a really good way to continue playing cards after you've smacked somebody in the face with a giant Raging Crab. Gotta love it. Do note this card is actually quite expensive. It's about $40, so if you don't have one of these, feel free to cut it for really any other number of decent equipments. I would look into ones that perhaps give First Strike, Trample, decent amount of stats at a reasonable cast and equip cost. You're just trying to keep your mana curve. It's hard to say mana curve with the equip costs on there, but you're trying to keep your mana curve fairly low so that you have enough mana left over to activate Charyx and make him big. So this is our damage plan. This is how we're going to hit people. This is how we get our giant enemy crab, giant enemy beefy. But before we can cut off the crab legs and enjoy our crab, we need to get him in. And how are we going to ensure that he hits people? We're going to use our Evasion category. We have 8 cards in here. Some of these are permanent effects that are just going to stay on the board. Some of these are a little more limited. But we'll start off with Minamos Sightbender. For 2 mana, he's a human wizard as a 1/2. You can pay X and tap Minamos Sightbender. Target creature with power X or less is unblockable this turn. Errated to say can't be blocked. If Charyx is at its base power and toughness, and you have Minamos Sightbender out, you just tap it. He's unblockable. And then you make him bigger, either using his effect or using any number of enchantments or equipments that you're putting onto him. And then, voila, he still can't be blocked because of that effect. And now you have a really big boy that you can swing in with. Next up is one of our lands, Rogue Passage. For 4 and tap, target creature can't be blocked this turn. It's a classic. Play it. Another one is a little more of a tech piece I put in here. Serpent of Yawning Depths, Krakens, Leviathans, Octopi, and Serpents you control can't be blocked except for by creatures with those types. Very conveniently, Charyx is a Leviathan, so this makes him unblockable, and also gives us a 6/6 attacker that can't be blocked. Skeleton Key is an equipment that gives the creature Skulk. It can't be blocked with creatures with greater power. When it deals combat damage to a player, you can draw a card, discard a card. What's nice about this is, again, very similar to what we were doing with Minamos Sightbender. You can swing in with an 017 and then activate his ability and pump that power up after blockers have been declared, which means that now his power is huge and he still couldn't be blocked because anything with higher than higher than zero toughness higher than zero power wouldn't be able to block him. Next up is very similar, Tetsuko Umezawa Fugitive. It says creatures you control with power or toughness 1 or less can't be blocked. So again, you can swing this in, they can't block it. After blockers have been declared, you pump him up with his ability. Thassa, God of the Sea, is on its own just already a very powerful enchantment creature. She's indestructible. She's a 5/5 as long as your Devotion of Blue is 5 or more. She lets you scry 1 every single turn so you can really find what you need, but also, for only 2 mana, target creature you control can't be blocked. Trailblazer's Boots gives your creature a non-basic land block, which means as long as an opponent controls a non-basic land, they can't be blocked. And Whisper Silk Cloak, this one is both a protection piece and an evasion piece. For 3 to play, 2 to equip creature can't be blocked and has Shroud. A really important note about Whisper Silk Cloak, if you are going to put this on your Charyx, make sure you have suited up your Crabby Man before you do that, because Shroud means that you also cannot target your crab with these effects. So none of your equipments would be able to be activated and equipped while Whisper Silk Cloak is on him. Alright, so how do we get all of our amazing equipments? Well, we're going to use our tutors. We have 6 of these. We have Fabricate, which lets you search for an artifact and put it into your hand for only 3 mana at sorcery speed. Mystical Tutor, which lets you search for an instant or sorcery, which in turn is just going to find you the stuff that you need. Spellseeker lets you hunt for an instant or sorcery with CMC 2 or less, put it into your hand and shuffle. And then Tribute Mage, Trinket Mage, and Trophy Mage lets you look for artifacts with converted mana cost 1, 2, and 3. Which, conveniently, 3, 3, 1, 3, 2, Hammer of Design you can't get, but Golem Skin Gauntlets, Fire Shrieker, Brass... you can't grab Brass Squire. Wait. Can you grab... You can grab Brass Squire, that's right. Your Blackblade Reforged, and even some of the cards we haven't talked about yet, like Swiftfoot Boots and Mirror Shield. This lets you grab a massive number of artifacts. Your Walking Atlas, your Sword, your Soul Ring, all of these. Anything that is 1, 2, or 3, you can grab with each of these individually. So Tribute is 2, Trinket is 1, and Trophy is 3. Super helpful, and they also give you a 2/2 body that, if you really need to, you can suit up as well. Alright, so let's now go ahead and talk about our power and toughness swap. So what we're usually going to use this for is simply after we've suited up Charyx to have enough power to not die if we swapped his power and toughness, we have 3 cards that allow us to do it. There's Crook Claw Transmuter, which for 4 mana gives you a 3/1 Bird Wizard. It has Flash, and it's a flyer, and when it enters, switch target creature's power and toughness until end of turn. This is kind of your one-shot effect. You're going to sneak it in, and suddenly Charyx is going to be a 1/18 or something like that and really hit somebody hard. But then we have Twisted Image, which is an instant for a single blue mana that switches target creature's power and toughness to end of turn and draws you a card. So while this is a one-shot effect, we specifically included in, I guess, our ramp section, we included Isochron Scepter. Probably doesn't belong in the ramp section. I can't speak today. Probably doesn't belong in the ramp section, but that's okay. It's in there. You can imprint your Twisted Image right there, and then be able to cast it for 2 every single turn, and you're drawing a card as well. So this has the power of being a cantrip while working perfectly with Charyx. The final in our power toughness swap is Merfolk Thaumaturgist. For 3 mana, you get a 1/2 Merfolk Wizard that when it's tapped, you switch target creature's power and toughness until end of turn. So this is a repeatable effect that we can use on Charyx over and over and over again. Alright, so let's real quick talk about our card draw, and then we will talk about our ramp, our protection, and then what I've put in as our lands. So for our card draw, this is mostly the classic card draw for mono blue. We've got a Blue Sun Zenith, which is an instant for X blue blue blue, lets you draw X cards and shuffle Blue Suns back into its owner's library. If you've already hit somebody with your giant crab, or maybe you just have some extra mana laying around, Blue Sun Zenith is the perfect way to grab a bunch of cards and then put it right back into the deck to do it again later. Next up is Consecrated Sphinx, which is just a giant Sphinx, 6 mana, 4/6 flyer. Whenever an opponent draws a card, you may draw 2. Next up, we have Narset, Parter of Veils. We spoke about this one in the Anawan deck tech, but if you didn't watch that one, this card is crazy powerful. For 1 blue, you get a 5 loyalty planeswalker that says each opponent can't draw more than 1 card each turn, and the -2 lets you peek at the top 4 cards of your library, reveal a non-creature, non-land, and put it into your hand. The rest go in the bottom. This card's crazy. This is always going to be good. This lets us hunt for our artifacts and our equipments that we want to put onto Charyx. Additionally, this lets us find counter spells. This lets us find removal. The only thing you can't grab are creatures and lands. And shutting off your opponent's draws beyond their first one each turn is immensely powerful and is absolutely something we want in any deck. And having an 017 as a blocker makes it really hard for opponents to get through and hit Narset. Next up is Rhystic Study. This card's always good. If you have this card, play this card. It's crazy. 3 mana for an enchantment, and every time an opponent casts a spell, they have to pay 1, or you get to draw a card. Who doesn't like that? Windfall here is a sorcery that has everybody pitch their hand and then draw cards equal to the greatest number of cards players discarded this way. This one's just really nice because you can fill up your hand really quickly and kind of get a refresh if you're out of gas, but somebody else has a lot of cards. And then the last one we're going to discuss is a little bit different, and this is kind of a very small sub-theme I have going on in this deck. This is Trade Routes, which is an enchantment for 1 and a blue. You can pay 1 to return a land you control to its owner's hand. That's weird. Why would we want to do that? Well, you see, Charyx's ability gives him +X, -X until end of turn, where X is the number of islands you control. But what happens if you have 18 islands and, oh yeah, no way to pump him up? Let's say somebody's gotten rid of all of your equipments or something. Well, that's what Trade Routes is in here for. This lets you pay 1 to bounce a land to its owner's hand. So if you have too many lands out there and you're not trying to kill your own crab, Trade Routes is the way to go. And you can also pay 1 and discard a land to draw a card. So it really lets you cash in those lands if you need to, and really control what power and toughness Charyx can actually get to. Alright, next up we are going to talk about all of our ramp here, and then we will end with our removal and our protection. So in ramp we have a lot of classics and a couple expensive cards, so I mean look at the price of that category. Feel free to replace some of these with cheaper options. Just like I said in the Anawan deck tech, Arcane Signet, you should have this if you have bought pretty much any Brawl or Commander product in recent, I guess in the last year. This seems like it will continue to be printed in almost every Commander precon from here on out. So pick up a copy of this card. This is amazing. It's 2 mana to let you, well, gain a mana. Next up is Chrome Mox. This is a card, it's about $40, so feel free to just not play this. You can replace this with something as simple as a Mind Stone, or maybe you could go for like a Mox Amber, since there's a couple legendaries in this deck. Or just look for really any other mana you want to use. You got a lot of options out there. But Chrome Mox is the one that I've put in here because I'm playing a lot of artifacts. Yeah, Chrome Mox is the one I'm putting in here because it's just really powerful. I'm sorry, I was thinking of Mox Opal here. So we'll talk about Mox Opal real quick since I just made that whole speech about it. This one has Metalcraft, and it lets you tap to add a mana of any color, and you can activate it only if you control 3 or more artifacts. So that's why I'm playing Mox Opal. Chrome Mox is in here because it's fast mana. It enters the battlefield, you can exile a non-artifact, non-land from your hand, and add a mana of any of the exiled card's colors. We are only in blue. So let's say maybe you don't want this Windfall, or maybe you don't need one of these mages. You can put that right under your Chrome Mox, and bam, you've got a 0 mana blue source. Next up is Dreamscape Artist. This one's really great. Pay 3, tap it, discard a card, and sack a land. I know it seems like a lot of cost, but it lets you search your library for up to 2 basics and put them onto the battlefield untapped and shuffle your library. He's mastered the art of Sleight of Land. It's one of my favorite flavor texts in the game. But this card's actually really, really great. Let's say you have an island in your hand, and you can just pitch that island, pitch a land on your board, and bam, there's 2 more basic islands onto your board, untapped, ready to go for pumping up Charyx. Next up we have Heartstone. The cost of each creature ability requiring activation cost, so activated abilities of creatures you control are reduced by 1. This can't reduce an ability to less than 1. This is in here because Charyx very conveniently has an activated ability, and so we want to reduce the cost of that. Training Grounds is going to be much the same thing, but it reduces it by 2 for only a single blue. However, Training Grounds is a lot more expensive to buy, so if you don't have one of those, definitely play Heartstone. I highly recommend it. Both of these cards are really, really powerful here, and I think they are well suited for this deck. Next up, we have High Tide. All your islands produce an additional blue when tapped, for only a single blue at instant speed. This is a massive burst of mana that can very suddenly kill somebody with a Charyx power and toughness getting swapped while he's already pumped. This is a way to ramp out some stuff early and set yourself up for future turns. High Tide is just always an incredible card. We mentioned Isochron Scepter already, so we'll go on to Mana Crypt. Once again, don't play this if you do not want to spend the immensely high cost for this. Play a Mind Stone. Play an Dreamstone. Play a any mana rock. Play any mana rock that you would like to put here. There's some really great ones, like Cold Steel Heart would be really good here as well. Just look for good mana rocks that cost around 2 mana or less, and put it in here in the place of something like a Mana Crypt. I have a Mana Crypt. I'm going to play a Mana Crypt. Simple as that. Alright, next up is one of our lands. This is Myriad Landscape. Enters tapped, add a colorless, but you can pay 2 and sack it to find 2 basic lands that have the same type. Basically, this just gets us 2 more islands for Charyx. Very helpful. Sapphire Medallion reduces the cost of your blue spells by 1. Sol Ring is Sol Ring. Play Sol Ring. Sword of the Animist is an equipment. Yay! For 2 mana, equip 2. Whenever the equipped creature attacks, search for a basic land and put it onto the battlefield tapped. This is especially amazing with Charyx because, as we know, as I've talked about like 40 times, Charyx cares about your islands. And so Sword of the Animist exists to get you islands during your Declare Attacker step before you swap power and toughness after blockers. So Sword of the Animist is straight up a power and toughness, well, I guess a power boost for Charyx. And what's nice is it's a May, so if you don't need that additional island, you don't want that additional island, you don't have to go get it. Terrain Generator lets you pay 2 to put a basic land from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. Also taps for 1 generic if you need it to. Thieving Skydiver is in here. I've put this in the ramp category because, I mean, this card is amazing and you're probably going to be trying to steal things like Soul Rings, Mana Crypts, Mind Stones, etc. But for 2 mana, you get a 2/1 flyer. You can kick it for X where X can't be 0, and you get to steal an artifact with converted mana cost X or less. What's really cool is if it's an equipment, you can steal it and attach it to the Skydiver, and then later put it onto your Crabman. And then finally, in our ramp category, since we already talked about Training Grounds, we're going to have a look at Walking Atlas, which is a 2 mana 1/1 that lets you tap and put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. Once again, these are all just ways to unexpectedly give Charyx an additional island to play with. Alright, our very last non-land category is going to be our protection and removal category. So we're going to have Counterspell. We're going to have Curse of the Swine. For X blue sorcery, you get to exile X target creatures and give the controller of those creatures a 2/2 boar. For each one, this scales up really well with just having lots of lands. Cyclonic Rift, this card is a classic. Always recommend playing a Cyclonic Rift in your lists. Darksteel Plate gives the equipped creature indestructible for a grand total of 5 mana across the 3 to play and 2 to equip. I just think this card is fantastic for someone like Charyx, where his toughness can really dip dangerously low when you're giving him +X/-X at larger numbers, and so Darksteel Plate exists there to make him indestructible anyway. Engulf the Shore is a bounce spell. Return to their owner's hands all creatures with toughness less than or equal to the number of islands you control. You never risk bouncing Charyx. And a majority of the creatures in this deck are cards that actually have enter the battlefield effects and don't mind being bounced. I mean, obviously you don't want to bounce your Consecrated Sphinx if you don't have to, but I mean, you're not really losing anything from bouncing a Minamo Sightbender or a Tetsuko Umezawa if you time it correctly. And your opponent's going to lose pretty much all their creatures because you have a ton of islands. Next up is another one that's just kind of a blue staple, Fierce Guardianship. If you have it, play it. If you don't put another good counter spell in the slot. There's so many good ones in blue, from cards like Abjure to cards like even like a Negate. You can absolutely play a Negate in this deck. But Fierce Guardianship's in here because it is a potentially free counter spell. Mirror Shield is another one. For 2 mana, 2 to equip, gives your creature +0/+2, and gives it hexproof. And whenever a creature with Death Touch blocks or becomes blocked by it, destroy that creature instead. Amazing protection card. Makes it really, really hard to block. Makes it impossible to target. Mirror Shield is a great card here. Narset's Reversal is another powerful instant. For 2 blue, you can copy target instant or sorcery and return it to its owner's hand and choose new copies. Super flexible card. It's like a soft counter, but then you get a massive benefit off of it. You keep the same X if there is an X cost involved in there. You keep the kicker effect if there's kicker involved in there. Just crazy powerful card, and I play Narset's Reversal in pretty much any blue deck that I can afford to do so in. Next up is Padim, Consul of Innovation. He's a legendary Vedalken Artificer for 4 with a 1/4. Artifacts you control have hexproof. This is just an additional layer of protection for all of your Voltron pieces. You don't want people to be able to pick and choose which artifacts they get rid of if they are trying to stop Charyx from running them over, and so Padim is an additional layer of protection there. Additionally, he gives us some potential card draw if you control an artifact with the highest CMC. Pongify is next, which is just a single blue for an instant that destroys a creature and gives that controller a 3/3 ape. Rapid Hybridization is the same thing, but with a frog lizard instead. Reality Shift is very similar. For 2 mana at instant speed, you can exile a creature, and its controller manifests or puts the top card of their library face down onto the battlefield. That creature is a 2/2, and it can be turned face up for its mana cost if it's a creature. Swan Song is a single blue that counters a target enchantment, instant, or sorcery, and gives its controller a 2/2. We don't really mind giving opponents these like smaller creatures, because again, Charyx is huge. He has the biggest butt in Magic. This man is an 017. They're not going to get past him, and we can run right over them by just boosting Charyx a little bit. Next up, we have Swiftfoot Boots. For 2 mana, equip 1, gives the creature hexproof and haste. I put this one in here over Lightning Greaves for a similar reason that I cautioned you about using Whispersilk Cloak. It's very important to keep Charyx pretty flexible to when he can be targeted by you. Obviously, you don't want your opponents to ever have to target him, and it already costs 2 more to target him. But if we can make sure that we can put our equipments onto Charyx and use our effects on Charyx without having to worry about Shroud, then we absolutely should. Alright, and last but not least is Tail's End. For 1 and a blue, it's an instant that counters target activated ability, triggered ability, or legendary spell. So this counters people's commanders, this counters certain artifacts, certain enchantments, certain instants and sorceries. Actually, I think just certain sorceries. I don't think there's legendary instants right now. Could be wrong, but I think we just got instant legendary sorceries in Dominaria. But either way, this also can counter activated abilities. This can counter triggered abilities like Enter the Battlefield effects. We can counter those with Tail's End. We can counter fetch lands with that activated as well. Alright, and then lastly, I will very quickly run us through our lands. Academy Ruins lets us get our artifacts back if they've been destroyed. Ancient Tomb gives you 2 mana in exchange for 2 life. Castle Vantress has the ability to scry for 4 mana, which is just a further mana sink. Emergent Zone lets us cast our spells as if they had flash, so we can drop spells very suddenly and surprise people. Fabled Passage is just an easy way to go find more islands. 24 islands in here. Mystic Sanctuary is an island on its own and also lets you put instants or sorceries back on top of your library as long as it enters untapped, which happens when you have 3 or more islands. Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx, can tap for a ton of mana as we have lots of blue pips on the board. Prismatic Vista is an untapped island. I mean, it's not, but you pay a life and go get an untapped island. And then Reliquary Tower gives us no maximum hand size. So, like I said, this deck is overall really simple. We've got a strong protection suite. We've got a bunch of effects that interact with making Charyx absolutely massive. And then the rest of the deck is all about getting the mana to do it, the cards to do it, and then sneak Charyx through. So really quickly here, I'll show you guys what a couple of turns with Charyx looks like, and then we will wrap this deck tech up. This looks like a very, very keepable hand, so we're going to go ahead and hang on to this one. Let's do it. We'll play an island and pass. We'll draw, play an island, and we'll toss the trade routes out because we're not going to play a Skydiver at 2. We'd play that at 3. Oh, here we go. This is a much better 3-drop. We're going to play this 3rd island and drop down Thassa, God of the Sea. Untap, draw. There we go. We'll play a terrain generator, but we're actually going to go ahead and put out our commander, Charyx the Raging Isle. So, we're actually going to slow roll the way we attack here since we don't have a ton of artifacts yet. So what we're going to do, first and foremost, is we're going to play our Prismatic Vista crack it, and go search up another island that we will put onto the battlefield untapped, all at the cost of a single life. And then we'll shuffle. Now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lands here. So we're going to go ahead and put out, first and foremost, Mirror Shield, and go ahead and put that right on to Charix. So now he is an 0-19 that cannot be targeted by spells or abilities your opponents control. Now with that 2 mana up, we could either cast our Thieving Skydiver, or we could make him unblockable, but since he is a 0-17, that's not going to help. And we also just have Cyclonic Rift up as a flex slot. So we'll wait. We'll untap. We will scry. It's a Serpent of Yawning Depths. I don't think we need that right now, so we're going to move that to the bottom of library and draw. It's an island. Perfect. We'll go ahead and play that out. So we have 6 islands out, which means for 3 mana, we can give Charyx +6 and -6. So here's how we're going to play this out. We're going to tap 2 mana, and we're going to make Charyx unblockable. Then we're going to tap 3 and give him +6, -6, and swing him in, and there's 6 commander damage right to your opponent's face. We're going to untap on the next turn, look at the top card, and there's a Padim, Consul of Innovation. Alright, so let's see. If we set aside 3 to swing in, 2 to make him unblockable, that only gives us 2 more to play with. So I think we'll just go ahead and play... you know what? Yeah, let's just... let's make Thassa, make Charyx unblockable again, and we'll just swing in for another 6 damage. We're already at 12. We're super close. There's a Fabled Passage. We'll play it. We'll crack it. We will go grab another untapped island. Well, actually, it comes in tapped and untapped, but it doesn't really matter. Alright, let's shuffle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 islands now, so now we can really start making some craziness, because we have enough to make Charyx unblockable with Thassa, and then activate twice for +14, -14. So we've just swung in, and we have just killed our first opponent. While they have 28 life left, we've already dealt 12 damage. You add another 14 to that, and that is more than the requisite 21. So with the right setup, like you can see, Charyx goes so unbelievably fast. He's so hard to get rid of. You know, that 2 more to cast is already just going to mess with your opponents, and Mirror Shield is giving him hexproof right there. So this is a really sweet spot that we're at, so we'll move to the next turn as if we have more opponents, and there we go. There's our Strata Scythe. We're going to go ahead and run that out for 3. Search our library for an island, and we're going to exile that island. That island is now exiled under Strata Scythe. Bleh. And then we'll actually go ahead and equip Strata Scythe for 3 as well. Charyx is now huge. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He gets another +7, +7. So he is a 726 right now. We've got 2 mana left, so we're going to go ahead and tap those to make him unblockable. And there's another 7 damage in there. So we are only 2 swings away from killing our second opponent. This is nuts. Go ahead and untap. We'll draw. There's another island. This is going nuts here. All right. So we need to set aside 6 to go ahead and do it twice, which will give us +16, -16. So we'll go ahead and tap the 2 we need to make Charyx unblockable. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, +16, -16. Bam. There's another dead opponent. Easy. Untap, draw, and keep in mind that +16, -16 is 8, plus another 16, so I mean, this just is straight up one-shotting people now. So we're sitting on a little bit of protection now. We've got a Swan Song in case somebody has a way to get through to Charyx, use an instant, or a sorcery to try and wipe the board. Additionally, our Thassa is a single colored pip of mana off of activating, or becoming a creature. So, let's see, should we... You know what, I'm not even worried about it. Let's make it unblockable. Bam. There we go. Activate at 6. There's 24 more damage, and we have killed our third and final opponent. And that is how quick Charyx can kill. I mean, sure, that was a decent number of turns, but we are sitting on with cards like Thieving Skydiver that could potentially speed up the game. Cyclonic Rift that can just absolutely destroy people. Spellseeker lets us hunt out cards that we need. Padim lets us protect our dudes. And Swansong is a counterspell. And every single turn as well, we're scrying, so we're able to dig through. There's a card like Twisted Image that just makes our dude huge. And that is the Charyx the Raging Isle deck tech. Thank you so very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this deck tech and you want to build this guy too. He's really funny, shockingly entertaining, and really great in the right Voltron shell. So, if you enjoyed this deck, please let us know in the comments down below. Leave a like and subscribe if you would like to be a friend of the gathering. I'm Zach, and thanks again for watching.